Hey, what's up? This is part whatever in my Ableton course, and I really hope that your fingers have not left your Ableton home row. They still should be whatever. Control and C with your thumb resting on the space bar, and you should really commit yourself to working this way, and that's how you get like lightning fast workflow and all that fun stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on getting result, I guess, and basically go over some more not so Toys R Us beginner stuff, and we'll start with a kick. That's the best kind of way to, get music done. And we'll just get a bass drum. Perfect. We'll drop that in either on this one, or we can create a new one. And we'll just create a new one, and you just drop it. Bam, right in there. And you look at it, and you'll remember, oh, okay, this is a quarter bar. So you go Control D, make a loop. There, you have a loop. So you have your loop, and that's all well and good. But some people don't really want to work that way most of the time. So you create a new MIDI track. I'll show you how to make a drum loop or a drum MIDI drums. So what we want to do is go to Instruments, go to Drum Rack. Got that there, and each one of these pads is kind of like this. Well, it's exactly like this right here. Now you get your 4 pads, and you can load any sound into any of them. And it's really fun to use. You just drop it in. Then you have this little play button here. So this is muted because it's off. This little off section here, it's muted. And what we'll do is we'll play with our little keyboard. We'll press a key between A and L, and some of the flats are above there, but we'll go A to L, and you'll notice that I'm pressing buttons, and I'm an octave too high. These are triggered by a piano, or like a MIDI keyboard, or you can map them to something. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to want to move this an octave down. So we'll just press Z or Z, and then we'll try again, and we'll see computer keyboard current state C1 to D2, C2 to D3. We'll go down, and then there we go. And now we can play all these sounds via the keyboard, the computer keyboard. So what we'll do is we'll kind of drop this in right here because we want to create a kick. So we'll insert MIDI clip, and it's not the full kind of guy here, which is interesting. So we'll take that, select the MIDI clip, click here, and it's automatically folded. If it's not, you want to open it up, and then you have your full-on piano, or like your piano roll, and then you can find where the kick is. Oh, it's that key right there, and this is a good way to kind of draw it in. Right, or you can fold. So what we'll do is we'll go Control B to draw, Control B again to take it away. We'll make that long. We'll stretch it out to the end of the clip. Pretty fun. We'll move this down, and then what we'll do is we'll duplicate. We'll select all of this, right? Then we'll consolidate. So we consolidate the MIDI, and it basically costs nothing. And if you have no RAM or CPU or whatever, and nothing on the hard drive, it makes the clip one big clip. So you can select all these. Blue is highlighted. Then you can shorten them up. Then we basically have the same thing here, right? And the benefit of this is we can oops, where am I? Come on. Yeah, we can replace the sound. So as it's going. Right, and there's a way to do it. You click on this, and then you can go through. And yeah, that's advanced. I never use that feature. So you have this. So now we want to load something else into this. So we'll arm this guy to receive MIDI. And I'm trying to play these with the keyboard, computer keyboard. And you can do that with, you know, regular keyboard, but we're doing it with this keyboard. So we'll find a clap, and this is basically how you kind of program drums if you're used to it this way. So we'll add a clap. So we'll edit the MIDI. We found the clap. Click on that. Right, so each sound is triggered by MIDI, and it's kind of simple to keep track. And you can do more things, like add cymbals, add an open hi. No, we'll add a closed hi-hat. Add that here, and then where's that? Yeah, Control B. If we're not sure, we can alter the fixed grid. We'll go 8ths. So the hat happens on the offbeat, right? Because this is quarter. Each one of these, the different shade, like the 2 shades of gray, they alternate between the pattern. So right now it's a quarter bar. And then we'll go half of that quarter would be an 8th. That would be where the hi-hat, the offbeat would lay. So you can hear that now. And that is your basic beat. And it's really fun to work that way. You can work with audio just by itself. Just dragging sounds in if you're used to working that way, or you can drop them all into a drum rack and draw them out, kind of like how FL Studio, like how the patterns work. Like each one of these could be its own pattern, and if you duplicate that and you make it a different color, you can add a variation, which I'm not good at. Yeah, see, and you can just Control D, and you can make these, these hi-hats more interesting by making them kind of faster, or, and that can be like how you would build a track. The only downfall is mixing these. Mixing is, making all the sounds sit well together. It's kind of difficult, because each sound you can drop in an EQ or whatnot, but it's difficult to kind of spread these out and listen. So yeah, right now, here's what we'll do. Move that over to replace it. I'll delete. Sorry. I'll delete the kick, so the kick is no longer playing in here. I could have also muted it, but for the sake of ease, I'm deleting it. So now we have our kind of hi-hat pattern with a clap. And what we'll do is we'll add an effect. See, you can play that with the kick too, so here we go. Right, so now I want that to be put into a space, and I want to add an effect to make it sound interesting and not so dry. So I just threw in a reverb, and don't worry about anything else, just wet dry for now. Wet dry instruments, that's the way to go. You start at 0 and then you bring it up as you want to hear it. You can even solo this. That doesn't sound too good on the hi-hats, right? But it sounds good on the clap. So what I want to do is I want to add that to the clap. So I'll select the clap. The clap sample is loaded here. I'll take this, see where that blue line is, drop it in there, and now I have that reverb only on the clap. Right? I'll turn it all the way up so you can hear it. So that reverb is only on the clap, and it makes the clap sound bigger. And that's your effects chain. Each one of these little pads is basically, it's essentially a sampler, right? And each sound, right, through the pads here, has its own separate chain. So MIDI comes in, it plays the sample, and that sample's audio goes through the reverb and then comes out. MIDI plays another sound, it goes through, and then what I want to do is I want to add a delay to make the hi-hat sound more interesting. So you get that, don't worry about anything else, wet dry. Just focus on wet dry for now. And then now we'll just bring the wet dry up. So that's affecting the claps, but it's not, no, that's affecting the hi-hats, but it's not affecting the claps. And this is how you build your track, because you don't want the reverb on the kick because it makes it sound too muddy, or it makes it sound too like boomy. You can if you want, but reverb sounds really good on claps, and delay sounds really good on hi-hats. So here we go. A little too much, so I'll bring it down. Now what I'll do now is you always do this. If you're working with strictly audio and not MIDI, you're going to want to consolidate. So we'll select all, the blue, right click at the top, consolidate, and wait for my hard drive to speed up. My scratch drive is ancient. And then I do that. This is consolidated. The loop section is good to go on each of these clips. Okay, select loop, and then now I can bring that out to 4 bars, right? And then I can add kind of a variation. Let's do that now. Just something. What the hell happened? Oh, we got an error here. So what happened was this loop. This happens sometimes. It's perfect. This loop sometimes does something weird when you consolidate kind of MIDI. So what it's doing now is it goes off. So we have a problem, and I'm really glad this happened because then I can show you. When that happens, when these little dotted lines don't match up, because each one of these gray spots is a bar, right? Well, not really. Like the more you zoom out, the less the more it becomes like 32. But if you zoom in, right, each of these is a bar, and the lines line up on the bar where the bar loops. See these lines here. This, however, does not. And what we'll do is we can just move this over, right, to the 2, and then now they line up. If this happens and you're just like, I have no idea what's going on, you just take this, move that over, move it back, so you get the little line break, right click, consolidate, loop, make sure it's there, and then loop again, and that should fix it up. So now I want to add a variation. I want to add another clap to the end, and then another bass drum, or I'll just take the bass drum out. So now we have a variation, right? So we'll just leave that. So now we have a bit of a variation in our beat. We need a way to resolve that part, and the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to add a crash or a cymbal, a little crash cymbal. So just go find one. That's a nice one. So we can play at any point here, so we can listen to what it sounds like. So now we have our Party Boy beat. What we're going to do is we're going to add a bass line, an offbeat bass line, and we'll do that by adding in a MIDI clip. We can either take a sample or we'll do synthesis. Synthesis is a little complicated. Well, it's quite easy, but it's a little complicated. So you're going to want to go to your trusty kind of Vengeance samples and then find synth basses. Any kind of root note works. Come on, just give me one that's acceptable. There we go. So we have this guy, and we want to load that into a sampler. We don't need to right click and create a sampler, drag in the sampler. We just drag in the sound. And oh, what's going on? It doesn't work. So this is the clip window. This doesn't work, and you have the MIDI, the 3 MIDI channels selected. You just go to MIDI here to activate the MIDI tab, and then you drag it in, or you can just select it. So when you go from here to here, it still shows the clip. It even shows a clip from another channel. But then you go here, and then you have your sample. So this plays like an instrument with your keyboard. So you just press a key. That's pretty low. So we'll press X. It's X and Y to go up and down. And you see at the bottom the current state. We'll go back down. So what we have here is we have a sound it's too quiet. There's 2 ways to do this. In the sampler window, there's a volume tab. It's -12 for some reason that I don't quite understand, but we'll bring that up to 0. And 0 dB is where it should rest. So now it's louder. So what we want to do now is we will mute the crash, mute our percussion lane, and then we'll move this back down to 1 bar. It's good to work in 1 bar. So what we'll do is we'll select, drop a MIDI clip. We'll find the offbeat because that's simple. So that's 1/8, and we'll find a key that we like. That sounds cool. So select pen. So the grayscale alternates. So this would be the offbeat, or you can solo this. Turn on the metronome and just to double check. That is not the offbeat. So what you want to do, the grayscale fucked me up, is move that over, and you can see kick, bass, kick, no bass. Yeah, and then and instead of drawing that in, you can select that part, duplicate, 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 select all, right click at the top, consolidate, and then that turns into one happy MIDI clip, right? And it sounds awesome. I want to turn off the metronome. You can do cool things. You can move the pitch down. That sounds neat, but what I want a bit more energy. So what I'll do now is I'll loop, drag that guy right to the end, set the loop section to the full thing, right? And then I'll mute, undo. Then I'll Control Z is undo. and then I'll take that off. So now we have this with the percussion and everything. Here we go. Right? That crash is a little too loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of balance my faders. And I like to do this as I go. Bring that down. I'll solo it. Bring it down more. Right? There's a lot of noise in that piece of percussion, but I can bring it down. There, now that sounds better and less obnoxious. And maybe the hi-hats are a little too loud. So remember when we went into the sampler? Remember when we went into the sampler when you turn the volume down? What we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing here. Hi-hat closed, just turn it down. We can even solo it. Then there's no more clap because we have the clap or the hi-hat soloed. So what I want to add in a MIDI effect. You can add a reverb if you want, but I want to add a MIDI effect, and I want to add in the arpeggiator. And this it takes the input signal, the MIDI input signal, and then arpeggiates it, turns it on and off repeatedly to a clocked rate. So right now it's 1/8 with a gate of 50%. So I'll just worry about these two for now, right? Rate and gate. So right now it's set to 1/8. Right? If I set it to quarter, it's normal because the note is a quarter beat long. I can set it to the 1/8. Turn the gate up to make the space between on and off longer in a weird, yeah, basically. Yeah, or I can bring it down to 1/16. And that would add a bit of energy. And what I'll do is I'll just unsolo that and give it a listen. Right, so then we have that, and that's all well and good. So now we're building a track with a variation. What I want to do now, let's add another effect. Let's what's a simple kind of effect? An amp. Okay, we'll add an amp. That is wet dry. So basically an amp is an amplifier. It's kind of modeled like a cabinet electric guitar, Jimi Hendrix, you know what I mean? And just focus on wet and dry, and then we'll solo this. Typically when applying an effect, you want to solo what's being affected. So we'll listen to this now with wet. It adds a lot of fuzz, adds a lot of color, and then dry, it's back to normal. So mix the bass more meaty, and that is really fun. Now what I want to do is add a filter, and a filter is a very, very, very simple EQ. Don't let it scare you. The auto filter, drop it in, and you'll notice it has, just focus on this window and these buttons, okay, and this knob thing, or this value. So this is a low pass filter, and I should really wait to get into filters, but what it does is it carves out the sounds, the high frequency sounds, like the s, right? That's a high frequency sound, and that's about kind of where it is right now. So right now we have the full sound coming through. When you bring that threshold down, it takes away all the high ends and only lets the low end stay. So low pass filter. See, low pass. So right now we only have the low end going through. Then we can open it. Right, and what that does is that'll clean it up. You also have high pass, which is the reverse. It carves out all the low end, so you just have the high pass, the high sounds, which sounds cool. Band pass, particular frequency only comes through. So it carves off the low end and the high end. And a notch would be the polar opposite of that. It's taking away. It's taking away a particular frequency, but leaving the rest there. But it adds kind of a weird phaser effect. But we'll stick to the low pass, and we'll just give it some room. We don't want the high end there. We want like a little bit of a woomph. Right, now we'll play that. We'll get rid of the. We'll take a bit off the rate of the arpeggiator. Alright, so now we have basic Party Boy loop. You can go on for days. We can add a bit of reverb after the filter. Only worry about wet dry. We can have that before the amp to get a more richer kind of sound. Right, we have that. Now, what else can I show you? I apologize. Yeah, what else? Programming, no. We went over MIDI. Okay, so we have MIDI. This is MIDI sampling. There's a child yelling outside my window. So we have MIDI affecting sampler instruments, and then MIDI affecting drum rack, and we built something from the drum rack, and you can have as many as you want here. And we added effects to that. Introduction to effects. Yeah, I guess that's it for now. Next up, I'll cover something else. Hope you're making your first little tracks. Yeah, and this is basically how you, basic track